Yeah.
I
But
just don't have my camera on, guys. I just don't look the bed. I woke up on the wrong side of the bed today, so
Oh,
yeah.
good.
Thanks.
Oh, good.
Cheers.
All right. Well, we are recording. So, welcome everybody to Black Belt Training. We're going to do Blue Belt today, and we're going to take that concept of what we did in Green Belt to a new level and just think about what we're actually doing. I gave you quite a bit, in all of the weeks so far, we've been giving you, the prompts and we're copying and pasting, which is absolutely the most efficient way to do things. But I also want you to take a step back this week and learn a little bit more and just think through how could I build this and, apply critical thinking to a process and step. I'm still going to give you the meta prompt at the end, so don't worry. But I just want to step back and actually explain to you what we're doing and how you could build it in a slightly maybe more manual way. But, if the meta prompt isn't giving you what you need or what you want, just a different way of tackling an automation, and certainly at a bigger scale or a bigger problem level. All right, so I am going to kick off. You can see my screen okay? Sharing my
Yep.
screen. Just a reminder that next week I'm actually at an AI conference, so I will be in San Antonio. So I'll give you an extra week to catch up on your homework, and I will be in Brisbane the week after. So happy to again come in person. It is a Friday. I know you guys don't, have everybody in town, but I'm happy to be there in person for our Purple Belt week. And, if anybody wants to drop in and just run through some of the belt homework and training, happy to do that as well. Alrighty. So I just wanted to jump off. I don't think I've shared this one with you, but this is a recent, basically a job ad. This is a real person. This guy runs, he's like a CEO for many, many businesses, and he is hiring for his AI first director of finance for one of his companies. And so, like, he's put it out there, it's got a huge following on Twitter. And I just wanted to show you that, that what we're doing here is really important for your careers, because this is like the first one of those type of jobs that we've seen out there in the marketplace, and as at a senior level, a director of finance. But it's just interesting, some of this language, like you don't use Google, maybe Gemini, it's okay because that's an AI tool. You can do the work of 10 people using AI. So the expectation on us going forward is going to be we are able to produce more work because of our impact with AI. So again, like AI is not necessarily going to replace you, but it will replace people that aren't capable and skilled in AI, because I guarantee that you're going to be more productive and able to produce more and at a higher level quality than people that aren't. So this, like all you guys, like those people that aren't in this course or aren't here, like get them to look at this and think, hey, you guys have got to back yourselves here. I know it's busy. It's a bit of a chicken and egg, which comes first. But as we get into the continued learning and upskilling of ourselves, this kind of stuff is going to continue to happen over time. You'd never hire a lawyer unless absolutely had to. And I want you to be thinking like that's also, where we look at, external vendors of any kind, not just lawyers, but our marketing agencies, any expert HR specialists that might be external, how can we actually start to take on that kind of expertise internally, because we have this incredible assistant at our fingertips, and that we've trained custom projects and GPTs on how to build models. But most of all, you're a strategic thinker and a conductor versus an accountant. So what do you think of that?
crazy. It's crazy. Like it's a big step. Do you know what company that is?
Just follow or Google Andrew Wilkinson. So he's like he's got many, many companies that he runs and automates in the tech space and sphere. So he's like a group director, CEO of CEOs. So definitely go and have a look at that. Um, Anybody else got any thoughts on that and what you're learning here?
I think I've banged on a lot about like, will this take my job? But I think what you said about, it won't replace us, but it'll replace those who don't use it. resonated with me.
Yeah, awesome. Path.
Yeah, it's really surprising to see because like I've also seen some tech roles with like specific for like developers and cybersecurity networking, all those places as well that are also advertising this stuff, and it's just crazy how AI is taking over so quick with the help, and it's also getting more accurate by the day, so even more helpful to people that are actually perfecting this skill.
Oh,
So pretty cool.
yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Well, I'll get off my little soapbox now. Anything else? So we've heard from Michelle, we've heard from Oscar and how you've been using it. Paya, Path, what else have you been doing in AI, and how did you go with Greenbelt homework? Okay, you were first in. Well done, man.
Um, yeah, I have done really well, but all the previous one is still pending. But other than that, in my regular life, maybe completely different than others because I'm mostly working as a developer, and for me, it does very good job.
Yeah,
Like sometimes the code have to write is take the whole day to decide me to achieve something in my mind. But by using AI, if I just say, hey, I want to create this kind of things, and it will give you complete base code.
yeah,
Then obviously being a human, you need to refactor according your use to
yeah,
achieve your things. But
yeah,
it saves time, 100%
yeah,
it saves time.
yeah, absolutely.
And for particular developer one, I know people discuss that.
Yeah,
It may, replace things, developers and things, but I don't afraid for that because obviously at the end
yeah.
you are the one who has developed ultimately AI kind of softwares, and you can't still rely on just AI. Being a
No,
developer, it's always whenever you have to develop something, it's always customized thing, and
yeah.
for those things you need humans.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about enhancing and enabling us to be more effective, so that skill set. I mean, I know another business, a fellow trainer, AI trainer, works with a business and they have a whole development team, and the CEO has mandated that if they do not use AI first, they will be fired. So that
Right.
so
But
it's kind of like gone the other way. It's like because he's looking for efficiency. So he's looking for, I want you to be using AI as a first port of call and then enhancing it, and it's such a good tool for, debugging or challenging your thinking, but also the documentation, which is sometimes can take, as long, if not longer, as developing code too, right?
yeah, 100%. And on top of that, like for me personally, English is not my first language, so it helps
Yeah,
me to improve my language whenever I have to message
beautiful.
someone or draft some documents or anything. And
Yeah,
on top of that, improve my code quality.
yeah,
Plus, I learned so many things. Previously, we
yeah,
were just doing search on Google,
yeah.
and
AI as a
we have to
trainer.
filter. We have to filter the whole result out of Google, which is right for me. And over here, you just give a question, and it gives you a correct answer for that particular one.
Yeah,
So, but it's not about searching anymore in the
love
Google.
it.
Um, so, in total, it
Very
saves so much time.
fantastic. Fantastic. Hey, Jesse, how are you?
Not too bad yourself, Alexi. I'm sorry I'm
Yeah.
late.
No, all good. You missed. I'll share a quick snapshot. I was just sharing an ad for an AI first director of finance. We were just having a bit of a chat around, the impact on work of the future. We're actually going to dive into that a little bit more next week. But this these are a real company, real guy. He's got many companies, and how he is recruiting for an AI first director. To be able to do the work of 10 people, and that concept of it's actually enhancing our employability by learning these skills. How did you work on AI this week, Jesse?
I actually had a meeting with tech about implementing AI using an app integration for Slack. So we can have
Amazing.
our company LLM available for all of customer support to kind of prompt through Slack.
Awesome.
But outside of that, I've also been using Claude Code to just try and build apps in my spare time. So I
Yeah.
had to rearrange my bedroom And instead of like, I used to draw it all out on a piece of paper to scale, but I just built an app with Claude where I could insert furniture of set dimensions into a room of a set dimension. And then it ended up spending like $3 million that. But now I have an app that you can rearrange your room in.
That's awesome. Well done. Alrighty, well, we're going to crack on. Any questions around Greenbelt from you guys? I think you're all over it on this call, just in terms of getting that automation set up. Your first assistant, we're going to continue on with that vein today.
Yeah.
No questions? All right. So our grading, I shared this last week because nothing has, I think we've had a couple more. Jake has done his green belt as well. So well done to Jake and you guys for keeping up. There's still, people in the background, Tim and Roxy, well done for you guys completing it. I know I don't get to see on there. Yes, Kaya.
Also wanted to share, I know I'm not updating anything on a simple academy regarding my
journals,
how many hours it saves in a journal, but that doesn't mean it don't saves. It's just that
no, I
I'm too
understand.
busy on the other side and I haven't updated anything on that day-to-day basis.
Oh, good. But if I can't see it, I can't reward you homeworks, like in and the awards.
That's okay.
So
but
you
it's
can
not
also
about reward.
you can also use it, just pop it in the Slack channel too, because either way, so hey, I had a win on AI, this is what I saved it for. I'll look at both to record that most engaged. So yeah, well done, guys. All right, so I did announce the winners for last week in our Ask Me Anything question. So no one for this week. So let's crack into Blue Belt. I just thought I'd do a bit of a quick flyover of where we've come from and where we're headed. Given that we're halfway through our program. So White Belt, it was all about understanding our base functionality. And we can go back at any point in time and say, okay, well, I've got a new task or I've got a new thing that's coming at me. How could I, again, explore the different ways I could leverage AI in my role? So we can always go back to any of these weeks and just look at it from a different lens. Our yellow belt was really about understanding how do we leverage these AI SOPs. And that's important, as you're starting to see in green and blue belt. When we're building any kind of automation or a long form prompt where we're wanting to go from process to process, we've got to have a structured methodology, and we can use AI to help us build that. So we'll continue to dive into that today. Orange belt, we started to look at how can we actually leverage the expert insights to solve any complex problem. I do have a much simpler version of that. I might actually share that in the chat in the Slack channel as a bit of a bonus. And you can go and actually build from that your own green belt automation based on a really simple coach that you've got in your pocket to look at any problem. So it doesn't look at the matrix, but it still will review experts in that field. So I'll send you that as a bit of a bonus in the Slack channel as well. In Greenbelt, better just write that down so I don't forget. In Greenbelt, we started to actually build out our automation, our GPTs and our assistants, and we looked at a little bit more of the technical flow behind it. In Bluebelt, we're going to start to look at our processes. Every step of the way so far, I've been giving you prompts. We've been copying and pasting it inside the workflow. I'm just going to teach you today a little bit more of the thinking behind it. I'll still give you the meta prompt at the end as well. But I want you to be starting to think about end-to-end deliverables, how you can go from start to finish, from, briefs landed on your desk, Michelle, for a training program, and that it doesn't just create the training program, but it also comes up with, okay, let's actually, start with what's our audience and what are their needs and where are the gaps, and do a bit of a gaps analysis. Then we get into the, the framework of the learning plan. And then at the end, it might be, let's actually come up with the speaking notes, the PowerPoint slides, and then a communication plan, right? So all of those steps that you would normally do, let's actually start to automate and hang them together in a process, right? So we're starting to look at some, not just a 2 times efficiency, but 100 times efficiency, especially where you're doing things that are similar in output. Next week, we're going to start to look at really how do you grab the steering wheel of your own career in this AI world? And we're going to be using AI as a bit of a crystal ball gazer for your role. So you'll definitely need your role plans for that. And then in brown belt, we're going to start to look at that automation that we had a look at very early on, which was the marketing flow. I'm actually going to give you the code to that marketing flow in brown belt week, so you'll be able to absolutely recreate that outbound email flow. But what we're going to be teaching here is how do we actually handle multiple, like Michelle said, multiple skills and different role types inside of process flow. So Michelle, you might have a learning development plan for a particular head of that isn't a HR team. So inserting that role type into the training program, if you're not a functional expert, will give you a different skill set and a different lens, and you can start to automate that as a process. You might not be a copywriter, but you might want to have a copywriter that is an expert in learning and development, actually develop the training program or the email communication flow out to your teams, or a follow-up survey or something. So that's what we're going to be doing in brown belt. So for today, as usual, have your AI role plan, or at least an idea of a task that you want to start to build end to end that's got multiple facets to it, as well as today's assets that I inserted into the Slack channel. You probably won't need a document to copy and paste it into straight away, but I do recommend anytime you're building a GPT, save it and keep a record of your GPTs and any code that you're building in Word or in your, your Teams chat, in your, what do you call it? SharePoint, because anything can happen inside of technology. If you have a power outage or you lose internet connectivity and you've built this 8,000 character automated assistant and you lose it, you'll be starting from scratch. So I usually build it from the process that I'm going to teach you today in Word, copy and paste it in, and test it once I've got it inside of ChatGPT there. All right, so again, 3 mindsets: work on your work, use things that are relevant to you or things that you're needing to solve. I love, Jesse, your app that you built around rearranging furniture in your room. We're going to look at AI first, continuing to come back to how can AI be my teacher? How can AI, help me with this particular problem? And I think you guys, when you're into, week 5, week 6, you're starting to see the benefit, and just like that, neural pathways being laid down, that that you've actually got a assistant at your fingertips that can help you discover the next step. And then daily growth journals, if you get a chance, either there or on the Slack channel, just drop a note just so I can keep a record of who's doing what. Jake put some awesome ones in last week, so he's going to give people a run for their money. He had an amazing time savings journal that I will share regardless next week. Our goal for today is to build a GPT assistant to really look at maximizing our ROI and really being able to measure our impact. So I think I might have shared this earlier in the process, but this is what we've called an AI productivity canvas, where, and I'm just going to walk you through, just a different visual of what we're actually trying to do here. So the beginning part, this is where we are looking to envision the entire process, and we're going through breaking the SOP down into the individual small tasks to come up with the completed deliverable. Before AI, there is an amount of time that it would have taken us as human beings multiplied by our hourly rate to give us a total cost of a task. Even though it's not costing the company external money, our time is still money to the company. So what we're trying to do through these processes is really take a look at, of this process tasks, let's look at these swim lanes. So your one swim lane, delegating it to someone on your team, might be another swim lane. You might have some tasks that you can think, okay, well, if I actually build the instructions now in ChatGPT, I can actually get one of my team to do it instead of me doing it all. And then there's parts that we'll be able to automate. And so you'll be able to come up with a new blended rate, which we always want to, be the last link in the chain to make sure that we're overseeing our output for transparency, and, making sure that Our humanness is baked in, to your point, Kaya. But what we can do is start to look at, well, how much time did it actually take AI to do at a zero cost rate versus, one of my team, which might be at a lower rate, versus me at my higher rate, to look at, okay, I've got a before and after cost of doing this. So one divided into the other actually comes up with a 3,000 times improvement. So that's the kind of stuff we're looking to be able to see, how much is it actually saving me? Now, what I've seen, and Michelle, you will probably attest to this, is just because you're doing things with AI doesn't mean you've all of a sudden got loads more free time. What it's doing is helping us then prioritize and pull other things forward, and we're using our time more effectively. I mean, that's how I'm seeing this happen over and over again. And is it helping you enjoy your work more because the mundane is starting to be a bit more automated? Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. All right. So we've got a bit of a 6-step process that I'm going to go through. And I want you to be thinking about, like, the analogy. I love analogies. It's a bit like baking a cake. So the first step, we're going to be kind of looking through the recipe book and looking for which cake do we actually want to bake. And that's like leveraging your AI role plan, right? So what's the process that we want to do so that we can now build from the ground up rather than me just feeding you some copy and paste prompts. And then, so taking a look at that, our understanding of the process and then defining the actual output and the deliverable that we need to create is where we will look at the process on our AI role plan. So I want you to grab or think about it doesn't have to be on your AI role plan, but what is a deliverable that you want, that you think, if I can actually, map out this process and start to automate pieces or delegate some of these pieces, it could be a 1,000 times return on investment of my time. Our third step, our part of this process now that we have been baking into our chat is actually to come up with our sample template. So the first step that I'm going to get you to do, once you've got that deliverable that you want to work on, our step 2 in our prompt is, to give, obviously, ChatGPT, and by this stage, ChatGPT's learned a lot about you and your role. So you might be able to say here, I am this role at this company, knowing what you know about me, or add any additional context in, and then ask it to give you a sample template for a particular deliverable so that you're getting a very first draft of something that you want to produce. And you can copy and paste that into your instructions once you've perfected it. If you've already got a sample of an output, so Michelle, you might have a go-to format and template every single time for your leadership and development frameworks and your teaching or your policies that you might have to come up with. So if you've got a sample, you don't need to do this step, you can skip over it, but just play along with me for today. Who would like to play along with me though, live on ChatGPT, and we will pull this together.
I feel like I over talk and over volunteer, but I would be happy to do it if nobody else has anything.
I was going to say I can do it, but I was going to do like a bit of a downer one. I was going to do disciplinary process templates as one of my deliverables. So I don't know. I can do it though.
So Michelle,
That's
what
the
was your
sauce.
idea? Oh, sorry, Jesse, what was that?
Oh, I was just saying that's sick, Oscar. Let's do that one.
Yeah. I'd be happy. I was just going to do like a mine's boring evaluation and measuring ROI again because I'm still on that train. But I think Oscars sound like more fun too.
Yeah. All right.
We
Well,
can do
we might go with Oscar. So Oscar, what is the end output ultimately? Because the deliverable is not just the policy, right?
Yeah, I mean, the end output, I guess, would be a process guide, or just a guide, potentially with like tips and advice for leaders who, for example, like a failed probation meeting, there's leaders who have never done one before or haven't done one in 12 months, 18 months. So like they need a refresher, and it's usually like a 30 to 45 minute session with me and the leader sort of going through how we do it, and yeah, all that sort of stuff. So that's probably the end goal is probably like a process guide, I suppose.
Yep. So is it more than just a failed probation period, or should we just focus on that as a narrow topic?
We can focus on that. That'd be good.
Yep. All right. Let's do that. Entain group Z. And what is your role?
HR business partner.
Yep. We have many leaders that do not let people that need to hire and let people go frequently. So they often will get the process for letting people go within probation. Would that be fair?
Yep.
All right, so I'm just going to ask for a sample template for that. This is not going to be 100% perfect. You could probably have, might have a policy or something that's already in play that you could add for context is what I would do at this step. What we will now do, so we've got the purpose of the guide. So it's giving us a framework, right? Considerations before the meeting. Don't worry about the content so much. Conducting the meeting, opening the conversation, explain the performance concerns, communicate the decision, discuss next steps, post-meeting actions, key do's and don'ts, and it's still going. So how does that sound in terms of like a basic framework?
Yeah, pretty good. It's a good start.
Yep. So, what we can do is, again, copy and paste that into Word, refine it. If you have anything that you like working with, it will be better as an output. But what we're looking for is like, what? This is going to form the basis of the instructions that we're going to use to build into our GPT, right? So we need to give it, when we're building an SOP, when we want consistency of output, you would have seen all of the matrices, and where I'm giving it a sample, what we're doing here is coming up with what's the sample template that we're looking for. So copy and paste that into Word and perfect it the way you want the output to look. It doesn't matter about the content. Don't worry about the content in here, but just make sure that the framework is the way you want it to be, so that you can, and remember, if you want, these bold headings, you're going to put the double asterisks. If you want italics, it's going to be one asterisk on either side. For some reason, 4.0 has now started to put like emojis and ticks in. You don't need them in there at all. You can take them out of your sample template, but it's up to you. So we're continuing to go, conducting the meeting. Let's see, key do's and don'ts, and further assistance. So that's the whole idea around this first step, is just let's get a sample that I can then bake in to the output and the process flows. Any questions on that so far? And I will obviously share this chat with you too, Oscar.
Oh, cool.
Jesse?
I had no questions.
Oh, cool. Awesome. All right. So our next step, we're going to start to look at how do we map the current workflow before versus after, and using AI. So going from this kind of process. So again, like we're going to use AI to do that. And we started to do this in our orange belt. So what we're doing in this session, it was yellow belt actually, is actually starting to bring together all of these skill sets, but we're doing it in a way that we're thinking through a process rather than just like delegating it as a copy and paste prompt. So our next step is to give us the detailed step-by-step instructions at a world-class level to complete this deliverable. In each step, where possible, we're going to refer back to experts in the field. We're not going to add the matrix in. We're just simplifying this prompt. And we're baking in that idea that we had in our orange belt. So we're going to ask them for that advice. And then we want to copy and paste that into the chat to get those processes back. So I'm going to now do that for the next step. Grab process number 3. and hit go. And you can, as I've been going through, anything that we've learnt to date, that if you think, oh, well, I might refine this, I want to add, 2 or 3 experts, or I want to add that matrix back in here so that I can kind of pick and choose and pull from it. You can always do that as well, right? So I'm giving you basics now because I want you to start to play with enhancing prompts to see what the process is. So now what we're doing, back to my cake analogy, we went through the AI role plan and we had a look at, well, what cake do we want to build? What I'm now giving you is kind of like the ingredients that you need to make the cake. So we need the sample template. We need the instructions, right? So we've got a step-by-step guide to creating a world-class process guide for failed probation meetings. So we've got our step and our purpose, why this matters, our key actions, clarifying the business need, gathering expert insights. So we want to refer to these leaders. We're looking at the target audience. So these leaders experienced, new, and so we've got to understand that. So this isn't automating the prompts yet, right? So that is going to be our next step. But it's just looking at where we can start to take these processes. We're going to copy and paste them into our Word document and think, if I wanted to automate all of these steps, like back to here, it's giving me world-class ideas for what these steps could be. We hadn't considered in the sample template above any kind of research and compliance standards. We might need to embed that into this, but we might want to as well. So we might want to look at any our probation policy, if we've got that, embed that in our knowledge file, or any Fair Work Act pieces, just to, as a little bit of a guide that we can automate there. And then we want to make sure that we're structuring the guide clearly. It's got some ideas on what that looks like. If you're happy with that, we can create that too. And then we want to draft a meeting prep. So when you're thinking about this, Oscar, the process of creating the guide is probably not something that you're going to have to do over and over again. So you might actually break this process into a couple of different steps. So you might create a facilitation guide for any meeting that a leader does, that you can put the context and the copy into it, right? So it's a bit more of a meta prompt rather than a specific action point. But what we can do is, once we've got that, we can say, okay, I've got the policy. I want my actual output is the facilitation guide for any conversation a leader needs to have, and they need to prep. So what's the policy? What's the legal document? What is our internal, best in class way of handling this process? And then, it might come up with it as a next step, not just the draft, let's draft the meeting prep, make sure you've got all of this information, which is great for any meeting, regardless of whether it's a failed probation report, right? So I want you guys to be thinking bigger than just like the one narrow particular output, right? So we can automate that, but can it do it? We won't need to do a failed probation guide over and over again, but do we need to create communication for leaders on processes and policies and things that they don't do often? Yes. So kind of take the what is out of it and make it more processy. You can still build the guide based on your current policies, but embed it as a more generic policy that has the steps for the meeting prep, the information that they need, the guide and the particulars. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. That's probably my main thing that I'm trying to, like, when I'm using AI at the moment, it's probably the main thing I'm trying to change my thinking on, is like not just get it to solve the specific one-time thing. It's like to get me to even like understand the bigger picture, or get it to do something that I can apply to other things.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, the thing that I see for you in this is that we want to create an automation that we can kind of hand off to our teams, that they can interact with it, and they can put in, like, if you can build your facilitator guide or your policy, you've got your policy guide and here's the employee section, you can build that as a one-off. But once it's got that, creating a guide that will help take your first time leaders, you might have a separate one for a reminder and a refresher. It might include a quiz at the end that they need to go through, and you can get it to generate an automated quiz so that it's testing their knowledge, or you can get it to do, hey, role play with me, so you're confident going into this meeting. So that could be a different way of working with it. So again, we're just applying the thinking process to how do we automate something. Yep, we can deliver the what. The meeting prep, I think, is a really good step for any meeting. Like Lofton leaders, they go into meetings and they wing it, right? And it often generally doesn't go as well as they thought it would. So, that meeting prep is pretty good. And it's got some expert recommendations there. And we've got, conducting the meeting section and how to do that, the conversation flow, opening and performance gaps. Often, what I always coach people is like, you don't want these kind of things, regardless of whether it's in probation or not, to be a surprise, right? We want to make sure that we've actually had some conversations and understand specific performance gaps is best in class, right? That's why it's in here. So it's a really good reminder for our teams and people. And then coming up with a post-meeting action section, which is what we also can automate, and a checklist for things that we need to do off the back of it. Did we think about that? It's not just a policy guide. It's like what happens afterwards. So we can start to automate and hang all of that together. And then lastly, finalize and test the guide. And you might also add in here, when you copy and paste this into your Word, you might say, well, I don't need this section, but I want to add in a quiz or a role play so that it's actually asking my knowledge, and, like a FAQ embedded in there as well, right? Does that make sense? So this week, I'm not going to be giving you a fully baked thing. I want you to be thinking through. So this week might take you a little bit longer, but we've got this. So this is our process step. What are you all learning from what I'm doing with Oscar here? And do you have any questions? Does that make sense, Michelle? Just like that bigger thinking, that bigger picture thinking? Yep. You're on mute, honey.
Sorry, it definitely makes sense. I've already done like I've used the prompts for 2 things, so I feel like I'll be able to use this a lot.
Awesome. All right. So back to our presentation. So we've done that. So our next step is copy and paste it into Word and reflect the steps as you actually want it to be. Then once you've got the steps as you want them to be, and you're thinking through back to this, and just thinking through, what do I need to automate once? Or, get ChatGPT's help with the structure and the output versus the automation of a process is what we're looking for. Once we've got that in Word, we're going to come back to starting to leverage AI to automate the different steps, right? So this is where we're going, okay, well, this time of these steps, which can I maybe delegate to one of my team members, or what can I actually automate? So we're going to use a prompt to be able to do this. And this prompt, so I can hear myself coming back. I'm not sure why. Can you hear me twice or once?
This.
I'll give that a go. Thank you, Michelle. All right. So what we're doing here, we're going to give me detailed instructions on how to optimize each step of the process in 2 different ways. Again, I want you to feel completely, if you don't have a team, don't do the second prompt, right? The first prompt is, how can I automate the step with generative AI? And we want to say generative, particularly because if we don't, it will go off on all kinds of tangents that look at predictive tools and things that you probably won't have access to even inside of Entain, or you'll have to go and tap on the data science guy's shoulder to implement. Assume that I can only work inside a tool like ChatGPT. You could change this to whatever tool. If you're working on Claude and that's your tool of preference, you can change it to that, or just change it to LLM, right? Without access or connections to any other resources other than what's possible, basically out of the box. And then secondly, to the extent that I can't fully automate it with AI, tell me how I might be able to delegate this to a more junior person. So it's going to, those of you with teams, you're going to be able to start to see, well, how could I delegate it? And what do I need to be able to delegate it properly? So again, we're starting to think of a process and challenge our thinking, and are starting to automate and getting rid of things off our to-do list to other people or to AI. What we're then going to do is start to design that workflow. Before we get into that, let's actually run that prompt and see what it gives us. Again, I've called it optional, that second prompt, but Oscar, you've got a team, haven't you?
Yeah, and I would love to be able to, well, it might not work with this one, but yeah, being able to like simplify instructions to hand on to more junior members of the team would be amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is going to give you ideas on where you might be able to do that. And you can always go back to Yellow Belt and use the AISOP instruction to build that out as well. All right, so I am going to hit go. And this is where you would copy and paste back in your revised steps, right? So you've, from this step above, like don't just use this because this is just what AI has suggested. It's not going to be exactly the process. So we want to copy and paste all these steps and we want to edit and tweak them based on the process that you're trying to automate. So copy and paste that into Word, and then at this step here, this is where if we've got some new steps that we've added, we want to give it the detailed instructions in here. So we'll attach that at that point. But I'm just using what I've got just for the sake of our meeting today. So we are looking at how we can optimize it. So our first step, automating with GPT. So the prompt acting as, say, this is where we've got our persona that we've adopted. Acting as a senior policy writer, create a clear purpose objective statement for the guide, designed for people leaders conducting failed probation meetings. And we expect a expected output. Take a look at this. Is it what you want? A concise, aligned purpose statement, high-level objectives that link business impact, risk mitigation, and leadership enablement. You know, quite often when leaders are doing failed, probation meetings, especially when they're new leaders, they make it all about, well, they get nervous and they wonder, like this person won't like me anymore, and they just want to, over and done with. But bringing some human element, helping them think about compassion, but being clear in their explanations without needing to be, you don't need to talk for half an hour giving hundreds of reasons either. So I think that's really important. The things that it's got a delegate to a VA here. It might be your team member. So just you can edit that. So summarize, you might want to get your team, summarize why this guide is needed. You could actually, you could do this step quite simply with AI though. You don't need to do this. So I would ignore that in this step. But where you come to a part where, I just don't know that this step, the automation, I'll try it, but I don't know that I can do it. It's giving you some other ideas on how you could actually delegate it to someone else. So researching legal and compliance, you would, again, in this step, attach your current policy or your contract, the relevant clauses of that contract, so that it can actually understand and list those rules and the legal pitfalls that we just want to bring people, to their attention. If you're not getting what you need from AI, just get your team and take this and build out an SOP on how to do this. Is another idea, right? So we then want to structure the process guide clearly using best practice from internal policy writing and knowledge management, create a well-structured outline for a process guide, including subheadings, notes for tone and clarity. We might want to give it some specific tone and notes based on our brand guidelines or our internal HR, way of communicating to employees and staff as well. And so again, another way you would delegate, to a team, create this outline. We don't need to do that in that step because AI does most of this actually really well. Draft the meeting prep. So create a step-by-step pre-meeting checklist. Again, you could get the VA or your person to turn this checklist into a printable one-pager using a different. So you might have some of this step, you might have part of it done with AI and then delegate the rest of it to your team. So it's giving you suggestions on what you can do to delegate it to your team, and you can also give them instructions on how to do that. Get that SOP done in our ChatGPT as well. Conduct the meeting section. This is where if it were me, I would build in FAQs and maybe a role plan or a bit of a FAQ a quiz. Based on the question. So, based on these policies and, the guide, come up with 10 questions with a multi-choice answer, to demonstrate their knowledge at the end of it. So it's just building out their understanding. Draft the meeting steps and actions. You mightn't have that as part of it, but I would suggest that's probably the most important part, that you need to document, what's happened. And then we want to finalize and test it. So it's also given us some optional AI enhancements to take a look at, get it to rewrite the guide in a couple of different formats. So FAQs, slides, cheat sheets. We might actually add that in as a step. It's like, now I want you to build out my FAQs. Now I want you to build out my cheat sheets. Now I want you to build out my slides. And then you can take and copy that and automatically build it. Give me my speaker notes. That could be part of your process. So you've got, and Michelle, this would be fantastic for you, not just the content, but you just keep going with those optional extras. And it's done, right? The whole lot is done. All right. So any questions on that process? So that part of it is, now we've got the instructions down for our cake. We've got the kind of cake, and we've got, the process and what we want to do. Now we've actually got to start to build the cake. Any questions? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yep.
Makes sense.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, our next step, we want to design the improved after workflow after with AI. So that's where we're going to do that in our ChatGPT. But before we do that, as usual, I've got the review the prompt in here. Once you've got the prompts bedded down in the process and the sample template and the output that you want, just get it to run a simple simulation of the prompt, assessing the effectiveness. So I'm just going to grab that. I think it just takes such little time. It's always worth running, especially if you're building automations. Just running something like this anytime to just give you feedback on it. You can make a prompt, a review prompt, much simpler than that. You don't need it to run a simulation. You also don't need it to run a rubrics. You can just simply ask it, if you are a more senior role, you might be, head of people for Entain, like Jess Sharp's role, review my process and my prompts and give me feedback on how to improve it and place them down below. But it is just so worthwhile always having it review it at a more higher level. It doesn't take long. So we've asked it to review it, comprehensiveness, clarity, sequential flow, and expert integration, as well as usability, and making sure it's easy to use. Get it to redo the whole plan, and then stop and ask me what I want to do next. So we'll just run that prompt. It will always make recommended improvements. That is the nature of AI. So it is always worth just spending those couple of minutes reviewing that extra step. Again, it doesn't have to be as complicated as this. So it's created a matrix. I want it to, yes, run the simulation. So it hasn't actually done anything at that first point. It's waiting for me to give it the answer. So now it's running a simulation. So the original score was 20, 22, 18, 10, and 12. So it's actually looking to revise that quite substantially. So let's take a look. I want it to now redo the entire plan. And we'll go back and look at that. So we can completely ignore anything that we don't want to delegate, but we want to make sure that it is actually different to our prompts above. I won't go through that now, but as you're going through this step, we just want to make sure it is actually continuing to follow along that line of questioning and thought. Stepping through those prompts, it's pulling in Josh Bergen, Simon Sinek there, making sure it's action oriented. So now that we've got these more elevated prompts, what we want to do, and in here, structure the process guide, this is where you would take that sample from the very first step and you would embed it into your instructions here. Use the sample as per below and format it the way you want, right? So anything that you're trying to output, you don't need to use a sample output and template. If you want consistency though, every single time, you need that sample to be structured in the way you want the output to be. Otherwise, because it's generative AI, it will just create whatever it thinks is the best format for you, and it won't be consistent. Okay, so if you've got a consistent way of delivering these kind of guides, then use that. So that's the step that you would add in, use this sample below. So what we then need to do, once we've got all of those prompts, is go back. I'm just heading back to here. We're going to go back to our Greenbelt instructions, and we're actually going to start to pull together the instructions to build the automation from task to task. So this is where we would take these processes. So our step 1, acting as a senior policy writer, we would take that. I'm just going to open up a new screen, chat GPT, and just remind you it's been a couple of weeks. So just go in. We want to go in to our My GPTs. We want to create a GPT, and we might our facilitated guide for failed probation meetings, for example, and a guide to help you facilitate a failed probation, and guide to help you facilitate a failed probation. And then we're going to start to put in, always start with an introduction, remember. So you introduce yourself as my failed probation facilitator guide, for example. And then we will have our task 1 with our little hashtag because it's a header, and we are going to give it a name, and then we will paste in our prompt. So number 1. So again, just go back to your Greenbelt homework to give you the structure, and then we will go to task 2 or step 2. Step or task, doesn't matter, interchangeable. Then let's get started. We need a belt, and this is where you can start to iterate and test what you've done. I suggest for Blue Belt, build it all in one flow in Word, and then instead of copying and pasting and iterating step by step, whack the whole lot in and then run it, but make sure you create it first and save it. Okay, so we want it, like, this is where you would upload any knowledge files of your relevant fair work or your policies, Oscar. And then we want to make sure that we're creating that, and then you can test it. And the important part of, our format, remember, when you're building them of your own accord, this is where it's more likely to potentially break down, and we want to know clearly which step it might have broken down in. So if it's not delivering the output the way you want, this is where you can actually step in and iterate that. And you can do that on this side, or you can actually go and create that and actually run it back in your normal screen as well. All right, so that is the process manually, like how to build a cake. What we're doing is building checklists for instructions. So I just want to give you a little bit of a theoretical, applying a book concept to what we're actually doing here. So old school advice, but applying it to an AI world. So this book, Bad Checklist Manifesto by Atul Gawande, talks about checklists and, what makes a good and a bad checklist. So he talks about bad checklists are really vague, they're imprecise, they're too long, potentially hard to use, and they're really impractical, made by desk jockeys that actually don't use them in the actual situation that they're meant for. And they treat people as using the tool as dumb and try to spell out absolutely every single thing. We're dealing, though, with AI. It can actually fill in a lot of the gaps. What we want it to do is fill in the gaps the way we want it to, but we don't have to tell it absolutely everything that we need it to do. So good checklists, on the other hand, are pretty precise, they're efficient, to the point, and easy to use, but they don't try to spell out absolutely everything. A checklist can't fly a plane. Instead, they provide reminders of the most critical and important steps. So as you're building out your instructions, remember that. The highly skilled professionals using them could miss them. So one of the steps that it added in there, Oscar, was that, hey, let's check on our legislation and our policy and remind our team of that, because if we overlook that, they might end up saying something that we don't want them to. So above all, they're practical. If we look at AI instructions and how we're building out our prompts, we want to make sure that they're precise to the point, but know that the AI actually can fly the plane, and it can fill in gaps. What we want to do is make sure that we're guiding it down the path that we want it to. And that's where the sample templates are really important as well. But good instructions have got to be practical to deliver what we want them to be. Once we've built that, we want to iterate it until we're confident that the output of the automation is at the quality greater or better than the output that we would have done manually, and certainly would have taken us less time. So it may take you a little bit longer to do a blue belt prompt manually, and that's okay. I want to be able to teach you how to kind of like think through the process and know how to actually build it so that you can undo it if you need to, how to build the cake from scratch. However, I've got our famous meta prompt that you can just go in. I'm just going to copy and paste that in as well into, and I've got a restriction there on the number of characters because that's a limitation in our GPT. I haven't actually got that in the instructions. Let me add that in here, the length of the whole single prompt must not exceed 8,000 characters. And I'm going to grab that and run that. So it's got a whole bunch of context already in here. I don't need to really add anything else to it. I'm just going to say, guide me through the above process / deliverable. And let's see, and you can do both, right? To see, is it actually giving me better prompts and a better flow? But I want you to be able to think through, because it's less about a technology and a tools perspective and our ability to think about the process and what we're trying to get it to do. If we've got policies that we can create them very simply now, we know how to do that. But what is the bigger process flow that if I had to do something over and over again and create guides for my team, I could actually do that for any policy. I can make a meta flow and a meta GPT that comes up with my guide, my speaking notes, my FAQs, my quiz in an automated way. All right, so it's coming up with these prompts. So just again, go back and compare it. So we've got a defined purpose and objectives, researching our compliance. So it's given you a little bit more the instructions the way that we've seen them before. So it might be simpler, but again, I wanted to just break down and teach you how to do it. It's really up to you how you actually end up building the Blue Belt program. I don't care which method you use, but I wanted to teach you so that you knew how to approach that. So have a go at either one. Your job for your Blue Belt homework, and I will send this to you, Oscar, is to actually build a tool that you're looking at how I can improve the deliverability, especially if you've got something, Oscar, that over and over again. If you have to create facilitator guides for any kind of policy, that would be a really valuable tool. That would probably create, a multiple of, 1,000 times improvement on your time. And what we will then do is just make sure that we're able to calculate that. Just come back and look at, well, what's the return on investment? So that's the other step in this homework is what would it have taken me if I had done it absolutely manually before, multiplied by my hourly rate, versus don't factor in the build time. Once it's built, run it. And how much did it take me afterwards, and how much would that have cost me to come up with a return on investment calc? Okay, is that clear? All right, so our next steps. Yep. And I will make sure that this slide is in the homework as well, so that you've got that's already in there, so you can see that kind of thought process. So our homework is to pick a task and then build a Blue Belt level tool and demonstrate that tool. Again, I don't care which way you do it, whether you use the meta prompt or you build it long form the way I've suggested. It's up to you, as long as it delivers something and you can talk about in your video the ROI as well, and then submit it as per usual. So we are right on 12 o'clock. How about that? Open to any questions, feedback. What did you think?
That all made sense for me. I've got to jump because I have another meeting, but that's yeah. I'm looking forward to exploring that. I think a bit more. I think like looking back, I probably should have chosen something a bit more broad, like we were speaking about.
That's all good.
But like, there's still lots of valuable stuff that came out, especially like the preparing for pre-meeting and stuff like that. ROI might be a bit hard to calculate, but I'll see how I go.
Yeah. Just do a reflection on it, if nothing else. Yeah. Thanks,
Cool.
Oscar. See you later.
Thanks, Alexi. See you.
Anyone else?
I have to jump as well, Alexi, but I really appreciate you taking the time to run us through all that, and I look forward to getting that one submitted as well.
Awesome.
I still have to
Thanks,
find
Jesse.
something that I think it'll be applicable for in CS, but I'll have a little brainstorm on that.
And I will get you over the recording and explore your career in the future. All right. Bye, guys.
Thank you so much, Alexi.
Bye.
Okay,
Yeah.
bye.
Thank you.
Bye.